Street, Southwest Ardmore, Oklahoma, and have lived in Ardmore for 62 years. I think that takes the first part of it.
That'll be fine, Mr. Sandlin. Mr. Sandlin, exactly how old was Ardmore when you first came here?
7 years old.
7 years old.
The month I came to Ardmore.
Well, the month.
Yeah,
well, you made the annual breakfast that they
I
held.
did. I made the annual. I had the big barbecue at that time.
Well, Mr. Sandlin, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the big barbecue that they hold.
Well, in those days, the local businessmen would contact the cattlemen in the vicinity, and they would donate the cattle, and the merchants would donate the labor and the other necessary things to have the barbecue.
Is that right? So actually the businessmen sponsored that?
Oh, yeah, they sponsored it.
And of course later on they still continued that through the day.
That's right.
Mr. Sandlin, when you first came here, exactly what was the location of Ardmore?
Well, it's located principally in the block west of the depot. Very little up where it is now, you know.
Oh.
Very little.
Well, what was it in a county, sir?
Well, it was in Pickens County, Indian Territory. That was the Indian county. But of course, the counties as we now have them were not instituted until statehood.
Oh. Well, in 95, I believe that Indian Territory was divided into the 3 districts. What were those districts, Mr. Sandlin?
The Central, Southern, and Western. I think. Central, Southern, and
Eastern, I think.
yeah, Eastern.
That's it.
We lived in the Southern district.
Oh. Was Ardmore a court town at that
It
time?
was one of the 3 court towns established at that time.
Of course, law is a great thing that you must have in order to be in business. Exactly what was the law in Ardmore when you came to?
Well, it is under U.S. Deputy Marshal. They held court in Fort Smith, Arkansas, for the criminal element, and in Paris, Texas, for the felony. A man got arrested while they took him to Fort Smith for a criminal charge, and they took him to Paris, Texas, for a felony.
Wasn't there a famous judge up there in
Old Judge Isaac Parker, known as the Hanging Judge, Fort Smith, Arkansas.
What exactly was your impression of Ardmore when you came through as far as the business standpoint?
I was very much impressed with it on account of the activity of business. Ardmore enjoyed a large trade territory, extended practically all over southern Oklahoma. There was, before the Rock Island was built, and before the Frisco was built. I wouldn't say the Rock Island either. That's it. But then we drew trade in this town from Eder to the Red River, and from here to Ringland and all out in that territory. We had 13 wagon yards here, and they were practically full every night.
What was the main, would you say, crop or industry you had?
Well, the main industry was farming, and cotton, of course, was the predominant crop. In the year 1894, the year I arrived in Ardmore, there were 50,000 bales of cotton sold from the wagons, the largest in the United States at that time. Now that's the only year we ever got it, but we made it that year.
Who was it that had been competing with you?
Waxahachie, Texas, had been the leader for several years prior to that.
Well, of course, to have as big a cotton center as Ardmore was, they had to have some mighty fine stores. What was the biggest one, Mr. Sandlin?
Well, the largest at that time was the iron store. I'm way over to tell about it. The iron store was located on the east side of the Santa Fe Railroad, facing west. was about 80 feet wide and about 200 feet long, and was known as a typical Western trading post. They employed about 40 clerks, and they handled every class of merchandise, even to manufacturing saddles and harness.
Well, was that...
Now, wait, there's another one.
Oh, okay.
After the next largest would have been W.O. Dustin Dry Goods Store, Glenn and Peoples, Peoples, Glenn and Peoples Dry Goods Store, and Hyden and Jackson, General Mercantile, Joe N. Barrel, General Mercantile, and numerous grocery stores, as such as J.B. Mansfield, N.E. Wise, J.B. Smith, C.A. Whitehurst, and others.
Many of those are still here, are they not?
No, not a one in business at this time that were in business then.
Is that right?
I won't.
Well, how about the mail service, Mr. Sandlin? Was it like it is today, or was it still rather distant?
Well, the mail service has, of course, has progressed over the years. At that time, the country was supplied by star routes, whereby they drove hacks, you know, to these country towns and delivered the mail, made round-trip trips. And of course, in the city, we had no free delivery. It was general delivery or in a box, rent a box. And well, it wasn't as up to date as it is at this time.
Did you have a post office then?
Oh, yes. I worked at the post office for 8 years myself, commencing in the fall of 1894.
Oh? Was it in the same position it is now, or was it in a different place?
No, it is located in the east wing of the Simpson building at that time, and later moved to that drugstore is on.
Ryburn?
No, of course, that makes the post office.
Oh, Steel.
No.
Steel Drug?
No.
Sadly.
Fedler. It's next located where Fedler's drugstore is, before they built the federal building, which they now occupy.
Mm-hmm. Was the inside anything like it is now? I mean, did they have mailmen, or did they just have the star routes like you said?
Well, they didn't have any free delivery.
Nothing like that.
Had to establish while I was in the post office.
Oh. Well, how about the banks, Mr. Sandlin? Of course, with such a rich trade area, banking would certainly be an important factor.
Well, when I came to Ardmore, there were two banks, First National Bank and the City National Bank. The First National Bank was established in 1889 as a private bank, and in the following year, 1890, they obtained this federal charter known as the First National Bank. And in 1892, the City National Bank was established by Dr. A.J. Woolton and Dr. J.A. Bivens, H.F. Potts, and continued in business until 1910, when it consolidated with the First National Bank.
Mm-hmm.
There's later other banks sprung up, but that's after, you know.
Well, how many banks were there actually?
Just only two banks, up until practically about statehood.
Oh. Well, of course, a newspaper was probably about the only communication you really had.
Oh, yes.
How did you have a newspaper here?
Yes, the Daily Ardmorite was established in 1893, the year prior to my coming to Ardmore. I worked on the Admirite from July until November 1894, and have the honor of having worked on the Admirite in the first year of its existence. In November, I began work in the post office when Captain John S. Hammer was postmaster. He was afterwards the United States Marshal appointed when McKinley was elected president.
Well, I guess you had many experiences there or in your other businesses. What were a couple of them? Do you remember?
Well, I can't recall any specific instances. I know it is we didn't law and order here, you know, as I told you in the first place, was conducted by the U.S. Marshals, but everything was quiet. We didn't have any riots or anything like that. Of course, it is known as a wild Indian territory, but I never did see anything so wild about it. We had pretty good society here in Ardmore, and people came here from different states, you know, and we had what I regard as a cosmopolitan population. For instance, my neighbor on one side would be from Virginia, on the other side would be from Illinois. One across the way is from Vermont, so that makes a melting pot or a force for good citizenship.
From the start, Ardmore had a drawing personality.
Yes, they had some awfully nice people. They were people of small means. They came here from other states, you know, to build a home in a new country.
Well,
to build their fortune.
Well, these people, Mr. Sandlin, would you say, of course, business is what we're on.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if these people had any needs during business that we particularly now don't have.
Any need?
Yes, sir, such as clothing or...
Oh, yes. We had up-to-date stores here for the times, you know. And we enjoyed just about as good a facilities as they had in any of the states as far as the merchandise is concerned. We didn't have a lot of the things that we now have. Now we didn't have any paved streets, we didn't have any electric lights, we didn't have any telephones, we didn't have any water system. We had our wells, you know, we had our wood piles, and we had our lamps, and such matters as that, you know. That is, we was kind of like living in the country, you know. Of course, there's no taxation here then.
Is that right?
All the cost of government was furnished by the federal government, and we didn't have any means of taxing the people to have these facilities that they now have. In other words, we didn't have any taxes to pay.
Really had it made.
We had that was awful nice.
Well, how about the stocks, Mr. Sandlin, in the stores? Did they have unusually large stocks?
Yes, the merchants had unusually large stocks for the size town because of the trade area, and at that time a farmer would sell his cotton and buy 6 months' supplies, you know. And they did an enormous business here in the fall of the year. As I told you before, there were 13 wagon yards here, and they were practically full every night.
Well, Mr. Sandlin, was there ever any catastrophes happen or big...
Sure did. In the year 1895, a fire started on what is known as Caddo, or First Avenue Northeast, in a livery stable. It came up, we had no fire department, so the fire came up the main street where the Martin Drug Store is now, crossed the street at the Whittington building where Captain W.F. Whittington had a large stock of dry goods, and both sides of the street burned together there until they reached the Champion building on the south side, and on the north side it went as far as the First National Bank building of today.
Just leveled it.
It was regarded as one of the largest fire losses compared to the size of the town that had ever occurred in the Southwest. Oh, they had immense stocks, you know. More of that thing met in the middle, and they had a lot of big hardware stores that had dynamite. Whenever that dynamite began to blow up, why the firefighters had to quit.
What did you have a fire department do?
Well, we had a fire department, a volunteer fire department was organized immediately after that big fire. The merchants of the town made up the money and bought a fire engine known as the LL Stove fire engine. And we had a volunteer department composed of about 30 young fellows of the town. And whenever we'd have a fire alarm, why, we'd all rush down to the Mill Street. That's where it was located. We had two big wells, or they're not wells, but they were, what do you call them? Cisterns. We had two cisterns on Main Street, and we pulled this fire engine down there with the hose, you know, and we fought fires from that, you know. Of course, we couldn't do very much, but we did some good.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Sandlin, are there a lot of those firemen left, or are you the...
I don't know any of them that's left. I've got a picture of them, but I don't think I think I'm the last remaining one.
The last Mohican.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Sandlin, when was Ardmore Incorporated? When was it made up?
1898. And incorporated 1898. And John L. Gold was elected the first mayor. A.S. William was the first marshal.
Was there a political party at that time here?
No. That was at the first election. They elected in the first election in '98. There were two Republicans elected to the council and two Democrats. All four of whom were the most prominent. Were among the most prominent men of the town. Businessmen.
Have Ardmore businessmen in those days, have any of them gone to other towns and have made big successes?
Yes. Lee Cruz became governor, the third governor of the state. He was third, let's see. Maybe second, wasn't he?
I believe third.
Well, Lee Cruz was the elected governor of the state. S.D. Bledsoe first became general attorney for the Santa Fe Railroad and afterwards moved to Chicago and elected president of the Santa Fe and remained so until his death. Henry M. Furman was a very prominent attorney here, and he was in the first election after statehood. He ran for the United States Senate, was defeated, but was later appointed to a judgeship in Oklahoma City. I forget what it was, Court of Criminal Appeals, I think it was, but I'm not sure.
Wasn't one of the newspaper men here too? Didn't he also turn out to be a Hollywood producer?
Yes, Finest Fox, who edited the Daily Democrat, was reared in this vicinity, but later moved to Hollywood and is a, what do you call them, scenario writers, or is so engaged at this time, and his brother became an actor.
Is that right?
Out there in Hollywood.
Well, Ardmore has really turned out many fine people, and I think they've really had an illustrious career. Mr. Sandlin, do you have anything to say on what Ardmore might be like in the future?
Well, Ardmore has made more growth in the last 5 years and made it into 20 of the 60 I've been in Ardmore. And I'm very optimistic about the future of this city. We have a fine citizenship. We have an ideal climate. And I don't see any reason why we could not grow into a very substantial city, halfway between Oklahoma City and Fort Worth. I think it's ideally located for a good-sized town. And people that live here like to be citizens here. If they move away, they'll tell you when they come back to visit you that they would rather live in Ardmore than any other place they had ever been. And so I consider it an ideal place to live.
It certainly is that. We certainly do want to thank you, Mr. Sandlin.
That's all right.
This has been Don Yeager reporting to you, who was a senior in the 1956 class at Ardmore High School.
Good.
Theodore Roosevelt was a fine man. He was a wonderful man. If we just had presidents like him, if we'd have had them from the George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, we've had some wonderful presidents that worked for the people's interest. But this old man, he had spinal meningitis when he was a child, and his brain wasn't right, and he wanted to be the great man of the world, the dictator of all the world. So he started all of this. He thought he could get all the black people and all of the underprivileged people, you know, that grumble and grunt about everything. Why, if he could get them all against the good people, the Christians, and overthrow this country, old FDR thought that he would be that great dictator of all the world. You can't imagine one person thinking that, but he thought that. And his wife was just as bad as he was. They were first cousins, you know. They were both Luther. And they both, their minds just kind of run together. Well, you know, you find that in families. You'll find one in the family, maybe the daddy or the oldest brother or somebody, that just wants to control everything about the home. You know, some men, the wife don't have any say-so about how to keep house or raise the children. He gives the orders. Or some woman. Women's just bad as men when they're mean.
That's true. That's true, isn't it?
They call us the weaker vessel. I said, if we were so weak, why did old Adam let Eve make him fall from grace? As he was so strong and she was so weak. No, we just all have the... sin. People follow the devil. Sin, what is sin? Breaking God's law, isn't it? That's sin. That's all is sin. We can't sin against one another. Because I can't make a law to control the world. Roosevelt tried that, but he couldn't. And they've tried it from Roosevelt on down to this man that we have now. That poor silly thing thinks that he's going to walk along in their tracks and he'll finally hit the right trail. But they forget that God's on the throne. And God created all creation, from the least little thing to the greatest. And only God and His Holy Son are great. Aren't they? That's all the greatness we have. I said, what did man and woman ever create? Trouble. Some of them, you know, some good Christians make life as it wasn't, that we had some good Christians and God was with us. This would be an awful world to live in. Have you ever been anywhere where they have these gangsters gang up and go in and destroy the schools and the towns and kill people and rob?
No.
Have you? You know, that must be an awful place. Now, I have a daughter living in Chicago. Didn't they go to Chicago and do something like that? Somebody asked me one time if I didn't want to go. Said, now, we'll just get a airplane and fly over there and you can visit with Mary. I said, now, Mary's young, and she probably could drive a car from Chicago here or get a flying machine and come. If she wanted to see me, she'd come. But I want to see her, but I don't want to make her unhappy. And it would certainly make her unhappy if I went there and she didn't want me. See? And if she wanted me, she'd come to see me because she can. There's nothing in the world to keep her from it. I give her a good education. I sold the last foot of land I had kept it for years and years, hoping to have me a little home in the mountains.
Oh.
I don't know whether all tribes are like that, but the most of Choctaws love mountains, and I just love the mountains. And I had it down, I forget the place now, but it's the other side of Summerfield. Well, I can't think, I've got so many things, you know, when I get to talking. There's so many outgoing lanes and incoming lanes that just go to work and just...
I know. That's wonderful.
Oh, you see, when I could write and think, I had 4 children, and my home, and Dr. Hartshorn. Oh, you know, the Lord said, if you marry an unbelieving person, don't leave them. Live with them, for who knows but what you did is saving of their souls. Well, I prayed and I worked and I praised the Lord. All of my prayers haven't been answered, just, you know, the way I pray. But I know that it's all for my good. Yes. Oh, all things work together for good to those that love the Lord. And God knows our hearts, our spirit. When we speak of heart, we mean spirit. That which we have of God that's in us. You know, the spirit, they call it the Holy Ghost. But it's the spirit of God that dwells in us. And if we let Him lead us, well, the old devil just can't send enough storms and enough hardships or anything to make us unhappy or to, shackle us, take our freedom from us. Someone said, sometimes I tell myself, I'm never going to mention anything like that again. And then I'll get to thinking and forget, you know, and I'll just go to talking. And so someone said, well, you surely have been through some deep water, muddy water. I said, no, it wasn't muddy water, it was just mud, and I had a hard time dragging through and kicking my mouth out of it. And I couldn't have done it. See, I would have sunk down. But God was with me. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Lo, I'm with you even unto the end of the world. Well, our world ends when we go back to God. And we got children going back to God. And our body's going to the earth from whence it comes. God give us not our body, but our spirit. And our body's going back to the ground from whence it came. But later, when all is finished, then we'll go back in the glorified bodies. Isn't that a wonderful promise, a wonderful... Well, we know it's going to happen because God said it would. And God, not like some parents, God never lies to His children. No. Everything that God tells us, it all comes true. Oh, if we just wait on the Lord. And you know, so many people say, oh, aren't you afraid to stay here by yourself?
Yes.
I said, no, all power is with me. The Lord said, fear not, I am with you. Be not dismayed. I am thy God. It's like your father said, but no, don't be worried. I'm your daddy. I'll see after it.
Take care of you.
He says, I will strengthen you. Yea, I will help you. Yea, I will uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness. We don't need anything else. That's sufficient. God and you, that's the majority, isn't it? Yeah. People get afraid. Oh, when God rebukes, even the old devil himself has to go, don't he? Because there is no power except that power that God ordains. God gives us all the power we have. He gives us the power to take the next breath. I'm going to ask you like I asked somebody one time, and I said, did you ever see or feel a miracle happen in your life? Have you ever experienced a miracle? Either one of you?
I don't know. I probably have. I can't remember. But I'm sure it has happened.
You're getting your breath
Yeah.
right now.
Uh-huh.
You're not doing a thing to get it. God's just lovingly giving it to you, isn't it? Isn't that a miracle?
That
you
is.
can breathe. Every breath you take is handed from the Heavenly Father to His children and to His creatures. God loves the sinner just as my mother used to say, oh, I love the sinner, but how I hate sin.
That's a good distinction. What was Scullyville like when you were a little girl?
Huh?
What was Scullyville like when you were a little girl?
Well, it was just a little town with 2 or 3 stores in it and a post office.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had the government. You know, they always, they're the big daddy of everything.
You're right.
Do you know if we had been the savages, if they liked to think, what would be done with Christopher Columbus when he come here? Would he ever live to gone back and told to the old world that there was a new place over here?
That's a good point.
No, he wouldn't. Why, they'd have killed him and eat him or threw him back to the fishes. But what did they do? They took him in, they loved him, they treated him, they furnished him with food and clothes, and they fixed up his 3 little ships. It was almost wrecked. And you know they must have filled it with food for them and clothes. We don't know whether Christopher Columbus stayed here a month or a year or 10 years. No, we don't know how long he stayed here, do we? No, because we can't count on what the people used to write about things. They imagined a lot of things, dreamed of, just like they do today. They just dream of things. Now this Henry Peck, he taught school for 40 years and he had to retire. And he come out here, and I asked him not to come, but he come 3 times. Wanted me to tell him something about New Hope. You know, they want to find something that they, about the natives, that they were wild and they were savages and cruel. And do you know the full-bloods? Full-blood Choctaws. I know a lot of different tribes. I have relatives in the Choctaws, Chickasaws, Cherokees, Seminoles, Creeks, and I said many more that I don't know of. My grandparents on my mother's side had 15 children. And so 15 children, that would bring about, now you think about the girls would marry and the boys and the family. And I've just got kinfolks everywhere I go. I went to the Holy Home of club meeting the other day. Well, I met 2 or 3 women that when they told who their parents were, their ancestors, one of them, she told, and I said, Wilson Massey, well, that was my mother's sister's child.
My goodness.
First cousins. And some of the Dentons and some of, so many of them there. I said, if I talked to everyone here, I'd break up kinship with you. You know, Pat Hurley.
Yes.
You heard of him.
Yes.
He's quite a, well, he's dead now, isn't he?
Yes.
Well, he lived at Hartshorn, and I lived in McAllister. I lived in McAllister about 15 years. And, of course, he was a friend of the politicians. And my uncles on my daddy's side was all politicians, you know, and D.C. McCurtain was. And I heard Pat talking one time. He said, and he was elected, and he was thanking the people and talking, and he could tell so many jokes, funny things, you know. He said, oh, you can't beat me. You don't need to try. He said, my parents had 15 in family. And from those he told the different branches that would go out, you know, and he said they all live here in Oklahoma. And he said they all vote for me, they all love me. And he said, and they've got lots of friends, he said, you can't beat me.
He's right, too. My goodness.
Oh, you asked me where I was born, didn't you?
Yeah.
I was born in Scullyville, the oldest Indian agency for the 5 tribes was at Scullyville.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they claimed that they was going to pay the natives. Now, someone will say to me, just to be kind of clever or funny or foolish, I don't know, I'll say, I don't know about the Indians, but just the natives here in the Western Hemisphere. And they said, well, but you wasn't an Aztec or Aborigine, were you? I said, well, sure, I was both. The two words mean one thing, don't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The first people that's found in the country are Aztecs or Aborigines,
yes,
whichever one you want to call.
That's the correct word.
Yeah. And I said, now, when these savages, foreign savages, invaded this country, they destroyed all of the things that we had in our way on record.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had a national name. Mm-hmm. I've heard so many of the old folks say. Another thing I want to say before it rushes out. I can remember when my uncles, they were all Christian men and women. They all loved God. God wants us to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And we all wanted to be good.
Mm-hmm.
We want to, as my mother used to say, live and let live.
Mm-hmm.
And do good and help people to live. You know, my mother, if somebody, now you see I'm going off on another trail. If some old person or some orphan child was penniless and homeless, nobody wanted them and they needed help, my mother couldn't go and stay with them, but she'd take the wagon and go and put them in it and bring them to her home and keep them and get doctors for them. And orphans, I don't know how many orphan children we'd have. They'd come and go. Some of them would be, half grown or grown and have nowhere to live. Their parents died. And she raised quite a few of her own nieces and nephews that were. I had an aunt and her husband that died at our home, and Mama kept the children. Now I'm related to the LaFleurs and the Fossums and the McCurtains and the Krebs and
Ainsworth?
No, that was a white family that come in here, and that was a mean, dirty family. Oh, the Ainsworth.
I saw that name on the sign up there.
One of them married a Choctaw, and she wasn't much Choctaw. She was selfish and domineering. She was one of the kind that when she had a slave, why, she'd just horsewhip it, you know, and abuse it. The full-blood Choctaws didn't. And the French, I don't believe that they had slaves, because my grandfather, when he married my grandmother, she had a lot of slaves. Oh, I guess, I think they said she had maybe 25, 30 or something like that, you know.
Mississippi.
In Mississippi, yes. They were married in Mississippi and had their 15 children there. And when she died, he called the black people in, and he told them they were free. He said, your mistress is gone, and you don't have a master nor a mistress. You are free just like I am, and just like my children. He said, I don't believe in slavery. You're a human being. God created you just like He created me, and you're free. But the law won't look at it the way I do. If you get out, they'll take you as a stray horse or cow.
Yes.
And sell you, or just take you if I don't come and claim you, why they'll But he said, you live here, just where you are, but you're free. You don't have to take orders from me. You don't have to work for me. I love you and I'll help you. And if I need help, I'll get you to help me and I'll pay you just like I'd have to pay somebody else. And if you go out, you can find work and go out. They'd hire their slaves out, you know. He said, I'm not hiring you out. You hiring yourself out. If you want to go out and work and make money, you don't have to bring that money to me. It's yours to use just the way you want to. I don't want you to drink. I want you to be good and do just like you've been doing. He said, now, some people have this awful stuff that the foreigners have brought over here. It muddles up your brain, but he said, don't do that, he said. I wouldn't like to have that. So Mama said that none of their slaves ever drank. I guess that didn't any of them, for that matter. They'd be afraid to, wouldn't they?
Your mother was born there, too, then. She was born with the other 14 children in Mississippi.
She was the last one.
She was the last
and grandmother died.
Oh,
when Mama was just 7 hours old.
And your mother's name was Martha?
No, her name was Rebecca.
Rebecca.
And my mother's name was Rebecca, and my grandmother's name was Rebecca. Yeah, my mother's name was Rebecca. My grandmother was Rebecca Folsom, and my mother was Rebecca Folsom Krebs. My mother's grandfather was Nathaniel Folsom, and he was Israel and David and Watson and McGee and all of those Folsom and old men, you know, brother. And I think Israel Folsom was a Presbyterian preacher.
I kind of remember that, but I'm not sure.
I'm proud of the fact that if I had any wicked relatives, I don't know about it. I don't know of any of them that would lie and steal. My little son, Duff Hartshorn, I kept my children at home. I didn't let them run over the town and so they'd be playing out in the yard, and I'd have a collection in a little while. A lot of mothers, you know, just go off and leave the children at home. Sometimes they go off at night and lock them up, and the house burns and the children burn with it. But Mama kept us all at home, the orphans and all. And they were good. People were good then. They loved one another. They were grateful for anything that you do for them. And they'd help Mama. The children would, you know. Now, my oldest sister and I, we were the only two McCurtains. Our daddy was David McCurtain, and he died early. I always said, well, he would have been the best governor the Choctaws ever had if he'd have lived longer. He was an interpreter at this old place in Fort Smith, what was that old Judge Parker's name? What was his first name? Old Judge.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, anyway, they called him the hanging judge.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't think that was any honor, but he did. And my daddy was interpreter there when he died and had been for years. And he was also head of the Choctaw marshal, whatever you'd call that. Then they called it the head light horseman.
The light horseman.
Yeah. It seemed like somebody said they still had a light horseman for the Choctaws. Do they?
I don't think so.
No, I don't believe that.
I know the Peter Cosner house down here. Peter Cosner? Cosner was a light horseman.
No, honey, it isn't Cosner. Mr. Costner is the educator.
Oh.
He's been here for 40 years or more.
I mean, Concert.
Concert, yeah.
His
Yeah,
house is down.
I knew him and knew the family and all.
What was he like?
Oh, I went to school with 3 of the girls,
Oh, my.
and This one is the only one that's living now, I think. Let's see now. And I think her husband's dead. I don't know. She may be living with some of the children. What is her name? I don't know anything great that man done for anybody in the world.
Peter?
Old Peter Consul.
Well, why is he so famous then?
Man, you see, that's a money-making scheme.
Yeah.
They're just making money out of it. Do you know they charge 50 cents? I wanted them to, and I still want this made, what do you call it? When you have all of this. Now that man will come out of Green McCurtain's old home where he raised his children at Sands Boys.
Yes, That's marvelous.
And I'd want things like that here.
Yes.
I don't want something that's greened up.
No.
They dug up a lot of stuff down here.
Where?
Joining my place, my bottom farm down here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have it now. I married a man that just run through with everything I had and got up and left me. Deserted me. They dug up a lot of things. Now they've got something that they've got a hand. I don't, and so many things, I'm just using that today. I don't no more believe that they dug that up down there than nothing. You see, they go and they make things and fix things. Isn't that awful? How, but it's dishonest. I was going to tell you what my little son said to a bunch of boys. He was just a little fella. I don't think he was more than 9 or 10 years old, 11 at the most. And the little boys, there was just a gang of them. As I said, I always stayed at home, kept my children at home. When they went, I went with them. And so they were just talking, you know, how children are doing. He said, my son was big to his age. And he said, oh, boys, hush. He said, be still, don't talk so much and don't talk so loud. Don't all of you talk at once. He said, don't you know you can't talk so much about lying a little? Well, they all got up, you know, and began to look at him. And I was at the window and I could see him. And I had my house built inside windows as well as outside windows. And so I just kind of stopped to listen to see what he was going to say, you know. He said, well, don't you know if you lie, you steal. And if you steal, you murder. A lying, thief, and murder will commit every crime on the criminal slate. Well, I was sure he had read that. He read good books here. He just learned to read real early. And he read good books. When he'd see a paper with all of that, the folks used to call them the funny side, but what comical, you know.
Yeah.
He'd tear every bit of that out and put it somewhere and burn it. He never would read it and leave it around and said, well, that trash, who wants to fill his mind full of trash like that? Now back to where I was. I was born in this old Indian agency, and the very first one that was established in the Indian Territory, called Scullyville. And when they abandoned it, it was built of logs.
Oh.
2 big log rooms, and then a little room, and then back rooms. I guess it was 5 or 6 rooms. Big logs. Big, they called them scalping the logs on 4 sides and put them down smooth. It was a pretty building. Well, when the government abandoned it, my aunt's husband, Colonel Tandy Walker, he was one time governor of all maybe different times. My uncles and my cousins were governors several different times, you know. And so Uncle Tandy bought the place, and I was born there in one of those rooms.
You were?
At that old...
Is there a picture of that building anywhere?
Huh?
Is there a picture of that building anywhere?
Well, I just don't know. I was thinking the other day, I wish that I had a picture of it, but there must be a picture somewhere. I just don't know. But that was right in Scullyville. And another thing they tell you now, Oh, you know Muriel Wright. Did you ever meet her and talk to her?
Yes,
And they say she's authority on native life, Indian life. She's authority on it. Her grandmother was a white woman. Her mother was a white woman. Her daddy wasn't a full-blood. They claim his daddy was. But the old-time Choctaws used to say that he was mixed, but he wasn't mixed with white blood. And he might have been, but he was real dark. And a lot of people said that she shows that other blood, but I don't know. I don't know anything. But I do know they never mixed with the full bloods. And the full bloods hated Aaron, what was his name? The old man. They hated Doctor, too, Muriel's daddy.
Why?
Oh, they didn't have a bit of use for him either. He was one of those kind. He was like the people that's trying to overthrow this country. He was always wanting to run the Choctaw Nation. You know, he wanted power. That's what most people want, is money. Because money gives you power. They have power, then they can just do what they want to, you know. And the money helps them through. You've got trouble and you've got plenty of money, you can buy yourself out of your trouble. You don't have to do like a poor man